Anyway, demand for money comes from utility of money. Um, Money is useful because it avoids the double coincidence of wants problem, which is the problem that I have corn and I want teddy bears, and you have teddy bears but you don't want corn, you want peas and broccoli. So I can't trade you corn for teddy bears. So what we need is something that can be traded to approximately everyone. So I can trade you money for teddy bears, and I can trade my corn to someone else for money. Money lets you trade when only one person wants what the other person has, instead of both wanting something that each other have. Sure, you can use money to pay for security guards, but the basic demand for money is that you can pay for anything with it. People want like universal commodities. So this is covered. I really like it in whatchamacallit. It's the Hazlitt novel. Time Will Run Back, I think. Yeah, this one, Time Will Run Back. It's also covered by Mises in like Theory of Money and Credit, among other places. But in Hazlitt's novel, it was like a communist society, and then they started making some changes to reinvent capitalism. And they had like ration cards where you got issued your rations, that you got like 3 cans of beans and a pound of butter and 20 cigarettes or whatever. And you get your rations every week, and you could just go turn in your rations, and you were stuck with whatever you were given by the government. And so one of the reforms was to allow a market in ration cards, where you could trade your ration cards for other people's ration cards. So you could say, I don't need more shoes, I will trade you my shoes for some cigarettes. So people created a market, a place where multiple people would go to try to trade ration cards. They had the market where they could trade their ration cards for cigarettes, shoes, food, etc. And then they would go wait in line at the government distribution centers to get the stuff with the cards they now had after trading. And so people started putting up like large whiteboards or signs or whatever, where they would list prices, where they would say, 3 pounds of corn trades for 2 pounds of butter. And they would list every single thing you could trade in terms of every other single thing you could trade. Like every type of ration card there is would have a price in terms of every other ration card. There's a ratio between any 2 ration cards. And that was like complicated and hard to keep track of because there were too many different things to trade. And what happens is you realize that the prices can be like, the ratios don't have to make sense. Like you could have a pound of butter trades for 10 pounds of corn, and a pound of corn trades for 100 cigarettes, and 1 cigarette trades for a pound of butter. And then you'd be like making infinite money if you kept doing those trades. Like you'd end up with more than you started with by trading in a circle. That would mean the prices don't make sense. Something is trading not according to its proper value. So what you end up doing is listing prices in terms of just a few common things to keep it simpler. So instead of the ratio of corn to every single other type of ration card, you just take a few common ones, the ones that get traded the most, like say cigarettes, alcohol, and shoes, hypothetically. And you list the prices of everything in terms of those common goods that are in high demand by a lot of people and get traded a lot. And then it simplifies things, and it's easier to keep track of and make the ratios all make sense. And then over time, quite possibly it will simplify down to just one price. Everything will trade in terms of cigarettes. You look at the ratios to cigarettes. So it's like, if you want to trade corn for butter, you find out that corn is worth 10 cigarettes and butter is worth 20 cigarettes. So you need to trade 2 corns for a butter. Using the intermediary of cigarettes, even if you're trading corn for butter directly with no cigarettes involved, is a way to simplify the market prices. And then on top of that, you can now just trade for cigarettes because you know you'll be able to trade them again later. So you're like, I don't need this corn, but I don't particularly want anything right now. What should I do? I will trade my corn for cigarettes, and then later I can get whatever I want with cigarettes because they're popular enough. Even non-smokers will take them because they know they can trade them again later. And the result of this is that more people are trading for cigarettes. In other words, there's a higher demand for cigarettes, which causes the price of cigarettes to go up. The value of cigarettes goes up because of their utility as a medium of exchange. They have now a second value. You can smoke them, but you can also exchange them. So people want them more, so their price goes up. And so that is basically what money is. And in the real world, the goods that worked the best for money in practice were gold and silver for a variety of reasons, including hard to counterfeit, stores really well, doesn't deteriorate over time. You can have a pretty high value of it in a small amount of weight and size, and some various other things. Cigarettes have been used, though, in jails and certain other situations as money when people couldn't have gold and silver. So that's where the value of money comes from. You don't have to generate demand for money, like it generates itself because it helps solve the problem of organizing the market better and making it easier to trade. In general, we value things by what the second highest bidder was willing to pay, approximately, because the highest bidder doesn't have to make his max bid. Like if I was willing to pay $100 for something, but no one else would pay over 50, then I'm only going to bid like $51. So that's the standard way prices work. The problem with that for land is like most land is not being bid on at most times. It's not like it doesn't have like a store price. Like you can go into Walmart and see what various things cost, and those prices are like pretty competitive and getting updated a lot for like what does a can of soup cost or whatever. But land prices are not as accurate as soup prices, I guess. I'm not surprised that lefties want to get rid of social security tax. And it's funny when the word curie is in other words and highlights. Oh, because there's more of a competitive market for soup. Like the soups are always trying to sell themselves in the store. If soup is not selling on a Walmart store shelf, then it is taking up shelf space and it's being wasted. Walmart is always monitoring what stuff sells, and they will take things off the shelves that don't sell well enough. So there's ongoing price adjustments and product replacements at places like Walmart. Whereas with land, someone can just own a piece of land for a century, and no one ever really worries about what the price is, besides the government. The government, in terms of property taxes, what they do varies, but in some cases, they actually base it on like what the land cost when you bought it. And if you bought it like 100 years ago, your property taxes can be super low. And it doesn't make much sense, but it's because they don't really know how to reevaluate the land very well. You can get a like a real estate agent to come and make an estimate of like what do I think this land would sell for. And if it's a standard thing, it's just like a house in a city and there are many other houses that sold recently, then they can make like a sort of decent estimate. But that's not just land price, that's land price plus house price. Like most of that is the improvements on the land, not the land itself. But then there are parcels of land that are less comparable to other ones. So there might be nothing similar that was sold anytime recently. Especially because their land is very location sensitive. So there has to have been like a similar piece of land sold in a similar location recently in order to get a decent estimate of the current price. Also with stores, they obscure the bidding process a bit because they just have set prices. You don't actually negotiate the price with them. And you certainly don't have an auction because there's enough for everyone who wants to buy it to some approximation of retail goods in general. And they're just doing that to lower transaction costs and make it simpler. So they just guess what a good price is, and then anyone willing to pay that or more buys it, and the other people just don't buy it. See, the second highest bidder thing applies when there's one of something, like a unique painting. But if there's multiple of something, like if there's 10 of something, then they could sell for what the 11th highest bidder would pay. Because the 10 people who will buy the thing that there exists 10 of in the world, they only have to outcompete everyone else besides the top 10. As long as the price is a little bit higher than the 11th guy is willing to pay, then the 10 people will all get one. Like that's the point of bidding up prices, is to exclude other people, to say I want it more than them. So I'm going to pay a price that excludes them from the market. If the market price is too low for things with limited quantities, then someone who cares about it less than you can get it. So if you care more, you want to outbid them to the point that it's not worth it to them to buy it. And that way the goods get allocated to the people who value them higher. But cans of soup are not in short supply, so that's not so much of an issue. The price of a can of soup, though, it's not based on, what would I be willing to pay or what would someone who values soup really highly be willing to pay. It's based on, like, they want to sell, say, 1 million cans of soup, or say 2 million cans of soup to 1 million people. So then they wonder, like, how low do I have to make the price for 1 million different people to buy 2 cans each? And then they set the price based on that. So it's sort of like an auction, but it's going way, way down. And also they're just estimating instead of running the actual auction. Most land just isn't actually being bid on very often. Like, most potential land buyers are not thinking about what would I pay for this land. Like, most people don't want to move right now. And most land isn't available, so they don't want to waste their time like researching it and stuff. So you just get a lot less pricing info about land because there's less transactions happening and less interest in it compared to retail goods that get mass produced and huge amounts get sold. Land is somewhat unique in general. Like, it depends on the city. There's like suburbs where they make a bunch of houses that are actually basically the same. But in a lot of places, like, the houses vary a bit and the locations vary a bit. Locations always vary at least a little bit, and that can matter because, like, you might want to live next door to a particular person. So even an identical house, like 3 blocks away, might be less valuable to you. That's a reasonably small effect. The main issue with land prices, I think, is just that there's less buying and selling going on, so there's less information and knowledge being created about it. Some problems with land value tax are it's hard to evaluate the value of land accurately. Often land hasn't been sold for quite a long time. So it doesn't always have like a fluid market that's setting like current up-to-date accurate prices on everything, because things will just not change hand for many years. And then on top of that, land prices can fluctuate a lot based on government regulations, stuff like zoning regulations or rent control. So how much taxes you have to pay could be significantly affected by, which can make your taxes like unpredictable. And then I think it's hostile to uses of land that are like less condensed. Like ranching is using a lot of land and it's not getting a huge amount of value per acre. So maybe it's kind of hostile to that, although you could say that that land is lower value by far compared to a small piece of land an apartment building is on, maybe, just because of location. Oh, but then the other thing I wanted to say is, if we're just talking about land, it doesn't involve, say, the value of the building on the land. So that's, improvements to land are in general most of the value of the land. Even on like a ranch or a farm, they have a lot of improvements to land. It's not just like the raw wilderness of nature. It's not a jungle. There's no wild animals or whatever. Or no big ones, probably. Just having like irrigation ditches, let alone actual buildings. Most of the value is in the things humans added to the land, not the land itself. And if you're going to tax those, then it's kind of like an asset tax or wealth tax. I know land taxing came up as a single tax. There was some guy who was advocating it like 200 years ago. I forgot the name, but I looked into this a bit. And it was criticized or commented on by someone I like. Maybe it was Hazlitt. If not that, it could have been like Mises or Riesman or Rothbard or someone. Okay, yeah, so whatever Mises said, I think I found persuasive. I'm probably just partly remembering what Mises said. And also, if you're taxing, like buildings and stuff, it's like a major wealth tax. It becomes a similar kind of thing to a savings account tax. Like, the more money you have in the bank, the more taxes you pay. Like, the land you own and the improvements on it, the buildings or whatever, are a type of wealth. And if you're taxing existing wealth every year rather than income, it's problematic. Because, like, suppose you're just draining people. You're not taking a proportion of like what they create. You're taking a proportion of what they already have constantly. You would also discourage, if you're taxing like the value of buildings, you would discourage building. People would put more money into other things, like they'd have, a really nice computer in a shitty building, so their taxes would be lower. They'd get things that don't count as building, like nice rugs, to make up for the building itself being worse. Like do a bunch of additions to the building that don't count as part of the building. Taxing what people have also punishes success, but in an even worse way, I think. So if you have like a 10% flat tax, you're not really punishing success, arguably, because on their first dollar, when they're not very successful, they keep 90 cents, and on their last dollar, like their millionth dollar, which is high success, they're also keeping 90 cents of that dollar. Progressive taxes punish success. It's arguable that flat taxes punish success, because you could say that the most services you'll get from the government is maybe $20,000 a year, supposedly, hypothetically. In which case, if you pay any taxes above 20,000, it could be said that you're being punished for success. You're paying extra just because you were successful. Because taxing what they have dissipates fortunes. It's okay. Suppose that you make $100 a year, for simplicity, and you save 50% of it. So every year you're saving $50. With an income tax of 10%, every year you save $50, you spend $40, and you pay $10 of taxes. However, with a wealth tax will escalate because your savings goes up every year. So the first year, the average amount of savings you'll have during the year is $25, half of your total, because you got to $50 saved by the end of the year, so your average during the year is $25. So in the first year, you pay taxes on $25 of wealth. In the second year, it's $75, because you have the $50 you saved last year, which you're getting taxed on a second time, as well as the average of $25 that you saved in the second year. Then the third year, you're going to pay taxes on $125. In the fourth year, you're going to pay taxes on $175, and so on. It's actually a bit less because you'll have lost more to, like, I'm not factoring in what you lose to taxes, but basically, yeah, the more wealth you accumulate, the more tax you pay every single year. So it's escalating in a way that is harsher than an income tax. Like, it's punishing savings, and savings in certain forms, at least, is extremely important. It's one of the worst things you can punish, because the basic way that we raise our standard of living is by accumulating more capital in the form of things like tools and factories, capital goods rather than consumption goods. So if we tax capital goods related wealth, that's one of the worst things we can do if we're like disincentivizing that. If we make a tax system where the more you consume, like, the less taxes you pay, then we're going to eat our seed corn, and it's going to suck. An income tax is like reasonably neutral on that. A wealth tax that included, say, factory buildings or office buildings would be discouraging business investment. If it was just like personal homes, then it could work better. The personal homes people live in are like somewhat proportional to income, but I think taxing someone's personal home rather than their income itself would be more biasing, because if you tax income, it's sort of neutral to what you buy. Like, you can buy whatever you want. You can spend more on your home, or more on your computer, or more on your car, or whatever else, and the income tax doesn't care. And it's also neutral to what your profession is and a variety of other things. Whereas if we had a tax on personal homes for personal use, then it would encourage people to live in cheaper homes and spend more money on cars, computers, food, whatever else. So it would be biasing what people spent money on, even within the consumption category, even if we kept it away from business stuff. So that would be a downside. I think one of the main reasons property taxes get used is related to local stuff. Like, a school district will put property taxes on people in the area to pay for the schools, because the schools are provided to people in the area. It's a local service being paid for with local taxes. I'm not saying that's a good idea. Like, maybe they should just have local income taxes or sales taxes instead. Taxing the unimproved value of land I think that would highly punish things that use a lot of land. Like, ranches would be punished, while skyscrapers would be incentivized. Like, you want to pack as much value as you can into less land. Like, you want more improvements per amount of actual land. If I remember right, the idea with the land tax from Henry George was to only tax the unimproved value of the land in order to equalize things. The concept was something like there's farmland of the first quality that lets people make such and such an income farming. And then if there's enough people and we run out of that type of land, some people have to farm on land of the second quality, and they're going to be able to produce fewer crops or less valuable crops for the same amount of effort. And the idea is roughly that's unfair, and if you taxed land of the first quality by the difference in its added productivity, then you would be like evening the playing field while also giving an income to the government. And it's not just land quality, but also, I guess, transportation distance to market would matter here. Which that's not transportation distance to market, like location stuff is not really a inherent value of the land thing, because it's related to where we put cities, but it is an important thing. And anyways, then as the country got more populous and people started farming on, say, 5th degree land, then the taxes on the first degree land would go up, and then the 2nd degree land would be taxed, and so would the 3rd and 4th. So that after taxes, people are indifferent to which quality of land they own. Something like that. One problem with that is the unimproved value of the land. Well, the difference in like productivity of the land depends on what you're doing. So, like you can imagine what I was just talking about with when it's only farming. If some of the land is going to be converted into other uses, then how do you even everything out with taxes to make it fair? When some land is being used for mills or factories or homes or whatever, rather than it just being that like this soil is 10% more fertile than that soil, which results in an extra 100 watermelons per year, which have a value of $100, so the government taxes $100. There's probably other problems with it, so like see Rothbard or Mises or whatever. Also, if you're just trying to even out the productivity of land after taxes, I don't think that's going to bring in enough taxes for like a modern welfare state, not even close. It might be possible to be enough for like national defense or something. I have no idea. But if you want to support anything like modern governments, you need to basically be taking a significant percentage of like the whole economy all the time. Because our government spends so much fucking money. Oh, taxes are not about protecting land in particular. The government also protects people, and it also does a lot of other things, or else taxes would be way lower. It's totally non-obvious that taxes should be related to how much land you have, versus, for example, how many people are in your family. Like maybe if you have more kids, you should pay higher taxes because the government is now protecting a larger number of people. Or maybe if you have a larger plot of land, you should pay more taxes, or maybe it should just be an equal tax per family or per generation of the family. Like if you have 3 kids or 1 kid, it's the same. There's a lot of ways to look at that. I don't know, it's not clear. I think the important thing is that it can be error corrected and improved if there's some major problem being caused by the current system. It's also non-obvious whether taxes should be percentage based. Like currently we have progressive taxes where not only is it percentage based, but it goes up if you make higher income. But even like a 10% flat tax is questionable. Maybe taxes should be, $10,000 a year. That's it. Everyone pays $10,000 in taxes because everyone is getting roughly the same service from the government of national defense and police and courts. And especially that would make sense if there were more usage fees, like if you actually had to pay a use fee when you went to court. Or maybe the police could charge usage fees to people who call the police frequently or something. Like it might be you got, 3 police incidents per year based on your taxes, but then if you're using the police more than that, if you're a heavy user, then you've gone over your allotment and have to pay some extra, which is different than just having a higher tax rate in some ways, because it's based on what you're actually using. Same thing with roads. As long as they're government owned, it would be reasonable for heavy road users to pay some extra money as a usage fee rather than just a generic tax. They do that in indirectly sort of with gasoline taxes, which is making people who use the roads more pay more tax. Anyway, another thing you can do with a percentage tax on income is cap it. So you can say you have to pay 10% of your income, but the most tax you can possibly pay is $100,000, because at that level of paying taxes, you've already paid enough to the government for everything. Like, the government's not going to give you more stuff if you pay more. They have that with payroll taxes in the US currently. So for Social Security and Medicare, they cost approximately 15% of your income, but you only pay them on the first like 100K of your income or so. And then if you make more income, those taxes go away because you've already made your full contribution. A resource no one initially owns is sometimes called a natural resource, or just an unowned resource would be fine. The general liberal theory for unowned resources is that you earn ownership of them by adding value to them. E.g., you find some unoccupied land and you build a home and a farm there, and now you own it because it is inseparable from the improvements that you personally created. And the other thing to know about initial ownership is it's not super important in general, because most of the value of stuff is not naturally occurring in nature. Like, most of the value comes from human work and effort and improving things. And on top of that, the market is self-correcting in various ways. Like, if the wrong people have wealth, then to some approximation, they will make bad business decisions, while less wealthy people will make good business decisions, and wealth will change hands. And the better, cleverer people will gain control over more resources, while the people who are misusing resources and squandering them will end up with control over less resources over time. There's a trend in that direction. That's a bit of a negative conclusion. Like, maybe you just don't like thinking about economics. That is my understanding, at least. You could look it up and check. Anyway, internet. So it could be related to economics. Like, it might not apply to other topics. You might like thinking about something else better, but you're not really engaged with econ, or you don't know how to think about econ very well. But if it was something else, you'd know better how to think about it and be more productive. Like, a lot of times people don't like thinking very much because they're not being effective. Like, they're having a hard time and they don't know how to fix it or what to do. Whereas if their thoughts were effective and they were like learning a lot, they'd have a good time and they'd like it. And switching topics is one of the ways to make your thinking more effective, because you can switch from a topic you're bad at or don't know much about to one you're good at or know a lot about. A lot of people generally like stick to the same hobbies and the same interests and activities and whatever for a long time, because they don't like learning new things. Like, they find it hard to get involved with a new thing, whereas they're more comfortable with the stuff they already know about, and they're happy to think about that because they've already gotten over the hump of getting started, which is what they found they didn't like. Another really relevant thing is motivation. Like, how much do you care about economics? Are you really motivated to learn it? Is that an important goal to you? How much do you value having a good understanding of economics? If the answers to that are kind of low or not very much, then it wouldn't seem very appealing to you to spend a ton of time on it just to get something that's not that important to you. Where what you want to get is like really important things you'd put a lot of time into, or if it's not that important to you, maybe just a little time would be worth it, but not a lot. It's possible to like find out reasons economics is important and like increase your opinion of it and value it higher. But it's also possible to do that with many other subjects, and in some cases, you already have a high opinion of something. People are pretty certain of, say, 2 + 2 = 4, but then they see like most of their ideas as like in a totally different category. And you should be trying to build up. They should be a little less certain of 2 + 2 = 4, but then for other stuff, they should be trying to actually figure it out to the point where they can be confident, similar to how they're confident with basic arithmetic or with like reading. Like, I'm very, very confident that this is the word hard, that the sequence of dots make the letters HARD, which spells hard, and that I know what the word hard means. I have that kind of reading confidence, and people have that with a variety of basic skills. Like, they're good at like walking and balancing and not falling over. They're very confident, very reliable skill, but they need to get that kind of knowledge that's actually like high quality for other stuff and like build up. A lot of times, part of why people have trouble reading books and they don't learn much is they don't do their own thinking. They just read the book version and they hear all the answers and they nod their head, and they've never really thought about it themselves. Whereas if they think about the topic themselves, and then they use the book knowledge or someone else's opinions for corrections and additional points and clarifications, it can work better. Like, you need your own version. Like, think about the issue yourself. What would your answer to it be? Use that as a starting point and then modify it based on what you learn from books is often a lot more effective than just don't think about it at all and try to stick the book's idea straight into your head. That's actually really important. I'm going to write that down. I don't think I said it quite like that before. Another good point about doing your own thinking first is you can have a before and after comparison. So if you have like, my initial idea is X, then I read the book, and now I think Y, you can look at what is different. What did you change your mind about? Whereas if you don't have any initial ideas of your own, and then you read the book, there's no like change log. There's no, here's what I actually learned that changed my mind for comparison, which makes it a lot harder to like keep track of what you learned. Like a list of things I changed my mind about is sort of like a clear outcome from the book. Whereas if it's just like, I learned all the things in the book because I didn't know anything and now I know all the things, that's a lot more vague. Then if you can point out like, here are the 3 things I was wrong about and now I'm no longer wrong about,